All right, weekly shout out and general topic video. Um, this is actually going to be my second attempt at recording this. I guess next time I can check the little thumbnail that pops up to make sure that I'm not recording from the wrong source. In any case, let's get to it. So thank you all to my patrons. And thanks to everybody, of course. I always appreciate all the likes, all the comments, all the sharing. Everything's very much appreciated. But definitely special thanks to the patrons. Really giving me extra encouragement. Definitely just helping me know that this is something I can invest in. I definitely appreciate all the patrons. So thank you, Michael Patton. Thank you, Brett, Jeremy Elder, Alexis, Pavilis Tomasaskas, Frederick LeMay, Tyler Smith, Joda Sandiger, Alexei Sherbako, Brendan Hopgood, Jeff Clark, Adam Boyd, Gabriel W., Rodrigo Tomazzi, Andrew Watts, Yuha Lendanoja, Brad Rispone, and new patrons Sergi Perez Casas, Lucas Frank, Simone Grondin, Andre Simbazi. I know I've seen you around a lot. Thanks a lot, Andre. If you could let me know how to pronounce your last name, I'd appreciate it. I'm gonna pronounce it Sambazi unless you let me know otherwise. So yeah, thanks Greasy Choir Boy, and thanks Nimativ, newest patron as well, who's also I've seen around. So thank you very much for becoming a patron. Appreciate it. Yeah. So anyway, let's get to the main topic of the video. Why do I play four ofs in my deck? So I'm gonna try to make this to the point. There are four reasons why I play cards as a four of. The first reason is that playing cards as a four of help make my deck more consistent. The second reason is that they help make playing cards as a four of helps make my strategy more focused. And third, devoting myself to trying to play four ofs as much as possible results in me playing overall higher quality cards. And fourth, playing four ofs helps me not obsess over constantly trying to have the correct balance of perfect numbers of cards at all times. So, all right, so let's get to the first point. The first point, yeah, four ofs help make the deck more consistent. I don't think this necessarily needs that much further explanation, so I'm going to try not to go too much into detail about it, but suffice it to say, there's a reason why almost every red deck plays 4 lightning bolts. There's a reason why almost every black deck plays 4 fatal push. There's a reason why, at least since it's been reprinted, almost every blue deck plays 4 counterspell. And there's a reason why almost every white deck plays I don't know if Path to Exile is the right example, but well, at least every mono white mid range, any white deck that approaches mid range basically plays 4 Stoneforge, and there's a reason why basically every green deck plays some type of mana accelerant. I guess maybe that's not entirely true, but probably mana accelerants are the most common green type of card that you see. So all of this comes back down to the fact that you really want to see the cards that make your deck tick, that make any deck tick, that actually kind of reward you for playing a particular color or for playing a particular strategy. At the end of the day, you want to see your most important cards, your best cards, as much as possible. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Like with Lightning Bolt, it's pretty obvious. With other cards, maybe not as much. But at the end of the day, if a card's as powerful as Lightning Bolt, if a card's, I think nowadays people are noticing as powerful as Fury, as powerful as Seasoned Pyromancer, most of the time you want to play them as a 4 of, and I think most people get that Ragavan 2 nowadays. But this brings me to the second issue. What maybe gets talked about a little less often, and what's maybe a little less obvious, is that playing 4 ofs not only helps you see more of that particular card each particular game, but it also helps you execute the strategy that makes your deck tick, and it helps you get into the play patterns that can bring you consistent victory. So what do I mean by that? So it's important to identify, like for example, what your deck is trying to do and what's going to result in in wins a good amount of the time. Like what's a place where a good source of your wins are going to come from, and once you identify where a good source of your wins are going to come from, you want to try to chase that as much as possible. Now, it's kind of, this might seem kind of obvious, but one source that the mono red Obosh deck gets a lot of free wins from is turn 2 Blood Moon, or for that matter turn 3 Blood Moon. But yeah, turn 2 or 3 Blood Moon. So I think it goes without saying that Ragavan becomes a 4 of if we're trying to jam Blood Moon on turn 2 as much as possible. It also probably goes without saying that we can play Blood Moon as a 4 of, but that may not necessarily always be completely apparent to everyone, because while it is true, now I think everybody would agree Lightning Bolt is an insane card and you want to see all 4 of these, and while right now it might be obvious that we want to see 4 Ragavans because they're just so nuts, there was a time definitely when people weren't playing all 4 Ragavans because they were more worried about drawing multiple than they were worried about not drawing them at all. And let me tell you, it became very apparent, I think, to everybody very quickly that the lesser of 2 evils is always not seeing Ragavan versus seeing too many. But in any case, I think with Blood Moon, this is a better example because I see a lot of people who play Blood Moon even in like their Blue Moon deck or whatever. Now, Blue Moon is a little different dynamic because from what I understand, they can't always slam it on turn 3. Sometimes they have to set up a little more with their basic islands. So it might be understandable that they may sometimes want to play it as a 2 or 3 of. But at least with us, where it's really not going to screw us up appreciably, certainly in most matchups, almost certainly less than our opponent, we just want to run with all 4 because at the end of the day, a key part of our strategy is choking them on mana before we then just try to mop up and finish up the game. And yeah, because that's kind of the sequence of events. You know, first we lock up the game with Blood Moon, then we mop up with burn spells, mop up like straggling creatures, whatever. Then we finish off with Obosh or other creatures. So yeah, just playing 4 of Blood Moon, playing 4 of Ragavan definitely helps that. But it's not just these cards. For example, Pyrite Spellbomb and Relic of Progenitus. What I'm actually noticing when I'm playing these cards is that the ability to cycle these, and you won't always cycle them, particularly Relic. I mean, you know, well, particularly Spellbomb, you may cycle Relic a lot if you're not facing a graveyard deck at least. But these cards won't necessarily help you hit turn 2 Blood Moon more consistently. That's really something only Ragavan can help with. But these do help you hit turn 3 Blood Moon more consistently, because believe it or not, turn 3 Blood Moon is not guaranteed. You may not hit your 3rd land drop on time, even with 24 lands, but just having these extra cyclers, it just helps a little bit more. And yeah, playing them as 4 ofs rather than any other number, once again, does feed in to the Blood Moon, to the idea of getting turn 3 Blood Moon as consistently as possible. But you know, they also help us get to turn 5 Obosh, turn 3 Season Pyromancer, you name it. Yeah, and you know, to some extent, Valakut Awakening as well, because if Blood Moon is in our hand, sure, we might have to come down on turn 4, or turn 3 actually if we have Ragavan and we can play Valakut Awakening off of the Treasure Ragavan creates. But yeah, Valakut Awakening, if we don't have Blood Moon, can help ditch basically the rest of our hand, and then we can go get it. If especially if it's a matchup like Amulet Titan where we really need Blood Moon in order to be able to win. Yeah, just basically playing 4 ofs. It just, like, once you identify what makes your deck tick, what strategies are going to bring you victory, maxing out on the cards that actually allow that to happen, which should be basically most of them, unless your card has multiple different directions it's going. And of course, this deck does in a way. I would say the 3 main pillars that hold the Obosh deck together are Blood Moon, Seasoned Pyromancer, and Obosh. And then to a lesser extent Hammer, because of the insane late game that it provides. The rest of the cards basically play support. Like Ragavan plays support to get Blood Moon out early, to get Seasoned Pyromancer out early, for the most part, while also just dealing damage and being a must-answer threat. Yeah, basically most of the other cards, are Lightning Bolt just helping you survive to where you can do that, or finishing off, yeah. So anyway, basically like playing 4 ofs is going to result in helping these strategies do their thing more consistently. It doesn't just help the cards themselves show up more frequently, but they also assist the other cards more frequently. So I hope that makes sense. So that brings us to the third reason, is that and this one is maybe the least intuitive, but honestly it might be one of the most key reasons that I think that I would advocate, at least starting from the mentality that we should try to be playing 4-ofs as much as possible, unless there's a compelling reason not to. Which, you know, sometimes like with Big Teferi or something, I get it. You know, Big Teferi is a card you don't want to leave home with blue, you know, Azorius Control, but it's also a card you don't really want to play all 4. I don't really play Azorius Control, so that's not a problem I really have. But, you know, like, for example, Little Teferi, I'm very heavily inclined to think maybe that should be maxed out. I don't know, if I played Azorius Control, I probably would. I would probably play like 2 Teferis or something. Like, you know, I'd probably, if I played like a higher end type control deck or something, I would probably have some mix of 2/2s at the higher end. I guess I'm just a symmetry guy like that. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how they would look, but okay. The third reason, sorry, is basically that playing starting from the proposition that you're going to play a 4-of, you know, a deck with mostly 4-ofs, it's going to result on average with you playing higher quality cards. And I know you all might be thinking, wait, what? How does playing 4-ofs increase the quality of my cards? Well, okay, it doesn't like magically cause like a Sharpie to come into your room, or like, you know, a computer program to change the way your cards work. No, what I mean is that when you're constructing your deck, 9 times out of 10, you could play an expensive card or you could play a cheap card, and 9 times out of 10, the cheaper card is going to be better. That's not always true. And obviously it's relative, because what is cheap and what isn't. You know, a 3 mana card is cheaper than a 4, a 2 mana card is cheaper than a 3, and a 1 mana card is cheaper than a 2, and 0 is cheaper than 1, of course. But of course, not all cards are equal. I think nobody argues that Gut Shot is better than Lightning Bolt, even though Gut Shot is 0 and Lightning Bolt is 1. But on average, if you can find a card that approximately does for your deck what you want it to do, and does that, basically does the same thing as a more expensive card would have done, but it does it cheaper, even if the effect may not be necessarily as strong, a lot of times it's going to be better for you to play that cheaper card, and a lot of times that cheaper card is going to be able to be played as a 4-of. And that's the point. When you're looking when you're looking to play 4-ofs, it forces you to look for, on average, cheaper cards that bring you these types of effects that you want. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. I mean, Hammer Bogarden. And I direct you to the previous week's video where I may have rambled a bit, but I did, I think, ultimately get out what it was about Hammer Bogarden that made it so good. And and of course, a big part of that is the fact that you can pitch it. But let me explain a little bit more about that. So, Hammer Bogarden, my journey with Hammer Bogarden in a way started off when I started testing out this card, Chandra, Heart of Fire. Because, you know, somebody mentioned, like, you know, do you want to, like, why not just play Planeswalkers, you know? Because, I mean, I did know that when people played Planeswalkers, a lot of times the game just ended if they couldn't deal with it. So I'm like, maybe we can have some type of Jace the Mind Sculptor type effect, and that's so we can really pull ahead. Because, you know, sometimes decks were outgrinding me, and that kind of bothered me a little bit, because I wanted to be the king of decks that outgrinded other decks. And one of the most common ways they did it was with Planeswalkers, so I thought, hey, maybe we can too. The issue is, and of course, you know, I started with Chandra, Heart of Fire because I didn't want to disable Obosh, and this card seemed insane because you can, it controls the board, you can discard your hand and play 3 cards off the top, which is insane once you get that going. It's insane card advantage. But needless to say, a 5 mana card is just kind of clunky. A 5 mana card you can't pitch like Fury. And yeah, now of course, like, you know, a 4 mana Planeswalker is a little bit more castable, but not by as much as people think. But yeah, at the end of the day, the issue was, so what I found out, actually, believe it or not, was there was another card that compared very, very favorably to Chandra, and that card was Burgi, God of Storytelling, and Harnfell, Horn of Bounty. So, why does this card compare favorably? Think about it. Chandra, Heart of Fire is 5 mana, and it's the main reason you're playing it is for that +1, where you can play the top 3 cards of your library as though, you know, they were in your hand, more or less, for 1 turn. And what does Harnfell do? It allows you to discard a card and play the top 2 cards of your library, essentially. Now, yeah, Chandra Chandra Pyramaster's +1 is better because you don't have to discard a card to do it in that sense. But Harnfell lets you do this multiple times, so it's not 100% worse. But more importantly, even if you could only use this ability once per turn, which would make it, for the most part, basically just strictly inferior, what Harnfell does that Chandra Heart of Fire doesn't is Harnfell comes with Burgi attached as an alternate way to play this card. And that is key, because what I found was a lot of times, as between Harnfell and Chandra, Chandra was just kind of win more. Harnfell basically already took over the game if I ever resolved this and I started to get going. But what Harnfell could do is it could also just come down as a 3-mana 3/3 that also had this ritual type effect when I played spells, which the ritual effect actually was more relevant than I thought. It did help me unload more if it actually untapped, which actually was pretty good. But anyway, I think you can all see where this is, where, you know, how this eventually all culminates in Hammer Garden. It's not a direct path, but it does. Basically, yeah. So the bottom line is Burgi and Harnfell are never as clunky as Chandra Heart of Fire, because you always have the option to play this card as a relatively reasonable 3/3 body with a relatively reasonable ability for this type of deck. It's nothing to write home about. It's nothing crazy, but this card will never be, will never have the ultimate clunk that Chandra Heart of Fire does. And by the way, you know, just if this ever happens, it's always nice. But if you ever happen to play a Burgi and then play a Harnfell after the Burgi, you can kind of go nuts sometimes with just how much you can do. So it is nice that the two cards complement each other. But ultimately, you know, I'm not saying Burgi is a great card that we should be playing. There's a reason why I went off it. I was very surprised, and I might just, for shits and giggles, so to speak, try it again sometime. Just knowing that it's probably not as good as Hammer, I might just replace it. Just you know, just for fun. It might be good to give Burgi a spin. And I've still got my 4 copies, as you can see. But yeah. But see, what happened is, I mean, I guess I'll skip to it. But basically, first, Fred. I mean, I guess just briefly. First, fellow, patron and fan of ours, you know, who's been commenting a lot, and I really appreciate it. Frederick LeMay recommended Igneous Inspiration, and you know, if you think about it, Igneous Inspiration compares quite favorably to Burgi and Harnfell, but you know, but basically the problem is it demands a lot of sideboard space. So I'll just cut to the Hammer Begarden, of course, because that's where we're on now. But think about how Hammer Begarden, because you know, basically Dylan Cruz, a fellow MTG content creator, check out his channel, you know, MTG Dylan. He's got some great stuff going on. I think that's his channel name. But in any case, yeah, compare Hammer Begarden, because like Hammer Begarden, I think compares favorably to Igneous Inspiration, at least because we don't have to cripple our sideboard, and when we get a 3-mana 3 damage burn spell, that also gives us some card advantage and a lot of late game potential. But yeah, so Hammer Begarden, like compare this to Burgi and Harnfell. It's almost a one-to-one comparison, because Burgi costs 3, Hammer costs 3, Harnfell costs 5, but we don't even need to choose one or the other with Hammer. We can just play Hammer, and then we can Harnfell for 5 after we've played Burgi in a way. So like, it really, and I think 3 mana for 3 damage most of the time to one of their creatures is going to be better than playing Burgi. Like, I think their average creature with 1-3 toughness is going to be more threatening to us than our Burgi is to them. So yeah, just saying. But yeah, so like, and ultimately, see, I never would have really gone down this path where I realized, and again, I recommend seeing my my video on Hammer Begarden for more details, because I'm sure all of you still aren't sold on that. But I just use this as an example. There's other cards you can use it as an example too. It's not just Hammer, but as you can see, if I didn't start from the proposition that I generally want to try to play cards as a 4-of, I may not have ended up on Hammer Begarden, which I think at least we can agree is probably better than Chandra Heart of Fire, at least as a 4-of. Because, you know, I could have ended up playing Chandra Heart of Fire as like a 1 or 2-of or something. As a 1-of, you'd never see it as consistently as you need to actually, you know, to actually pull ahead. I mean, you will sometimes, but also even playing as a 1-of sometimes, when I drew it, even as a 1-of, it still kind of clunked up my hand, because 5 mana, no matter how you slice it, can just be hard to cast sometimes. Obosh, of course, is a free roll, so it doesn't matter as much that it can be hard to cast sometimes. But yeah, suffice it to say, I do think that playing cards as a 4-of improves the quality of your cards. And maybe another example of that too could be Relic of Progenitus, although most people would probably pick like a number around 4 anyway of Graveyard Hate cards and then split something up if not Relic. Maybe this goes to focus and like strategy, just because this card is so good at dealing with Tarmogoyf, dealing with Dronalok, dealing with all kinds of stuff, and there's just really no other card that kind of does that. So I think this could fall into the focus strategy. It's just more focused on what makes a mid-range kind of Graveyard Hate card really great, and it is all those things and more. But yeah, you could think of another example maybe of a card that forces you to play it as a 4-of. Trying to think of like another deck. Well, I mean, again, everybody might not necessarily be sold, but with mono black, for example, I guess with like Turok, you could play something like, yeah, maybe this isn't the best example because I'm not so sure how many like late game cards that empty the opponent's hand would ever see play, period. But Turok also being a 2-mana 2/1 is pretty cool. So, anyway, maybe this is just kind of a meism, but a lot of times I'm going to gravitate towards cards that are more capable of being played as a 4-of, rather than bigger, splashier cards that you can play as like a 1 or 2-of. I'm just going to mostly cut those cards, and I'm going to make room for the cheaper cards that have some type of recursive or some other ability built into them. And in my opinion, that does increase the overall, that does make the overall quality of your cards better. So, so yeah, number 3 was that. Number 4, the final reason why I like to keep my cards as a 4-of is that I don't know about all of you, but I can be a little obsessive sometimes over trying to have like the perfect configuration of my deck, and keeping it all 4-ofs. It just helps me feel a little bit more at peace that I and not tune it like forever. And I do make card changes, but it's relatively simpler. When there's a card that's not working, I swap it out for another card that works. But like I remember for a while when I used to play cards as less than 4-ofs, it would sometimes just drive me nuts how much I would obsess over like, do I want 3 counter spells? Do I want 2? Do I want 4? Oh, I could see the argument for 3. I could see the argument for 2. Maybe I want to add some like maybe I want to add some like Arcane Denial, and not really, but like just the point is the point is it can get distracting. It can get distracting, it can actually even get distracting in your games where where sometimes like you see these cards and you become more worried about whether you're playing the correct number. You think more about like, after the game if you're going to add more or whatever than necessarily the game itself. And I just find that when I play cards as a 4-of, the most I'm thinking of is if I really like a card or not. I'm not really obsessing over the number of cards that I'm playing. So this might be kind of a meism. Maybe this is the most meism so far. But if any of you all can relate and you feel like you're stressing too much about playing the right number, and it's like, it's just really, really hard to feel like you've got everything tuned properly. I mean, I'm telling you right now, if you try playing things essentially all as 4-ofs, it's gonna for the most part just wipe out this feeling that your deck isn't perfectly tuned, and that and it's gonna stop a lot of obsessing over like I remember sometimes I would like. I remember like in Legacy Merfolk, for example, I was so it would drive me nuts whether I should play 1 Echoing Tooth, 2 Echoing Tooth, 3 Echoing Tooth, or maybe even 4 Echoing Tooth. Because at a time it's hard to explain, but at a time Echoing Tooth was just particularly well positioned. It dealt with Empty the Warrens tokens, which yes saw a lot of play in Legacy, like ANT and stuff. There was Stax was kind of making a resurgence. Reanimator, you could sometimes tag their reanimation creatures with Echoing Truth. For whatever reason, there was a time when Echoing Truth was particularly well positioned and was kind of doing work, but also sometimes you'd face matchups, like Death and Taxes, where it was good, but you'd probably want to have it more as like a 2-of. It was good, but not great, and if you saw too many of them, its value kind of just went completely downhill. So I just remember there was a time in Merfolk where I was just obsessing so much over how many copies of Echoing Truth I was going to play. And it's just, I remember I would like add an Echoing Truth, take it out, add an Echoing Truth, take it out, and then like, I just felt like it was stressing me out and it was wasting my time. And I can't remember exactly what the catalyst was, but eventually I just said, enough of this, and I just started playing 4 of everything. And actually, you know, the funny thing is when I first started playing Magic competitively, I started playing 4 of everything. Because I mean, I think most of us, we started off playing like 100 card decks with like 2, 1, and like all kinds of small numbers of cards, you know. But like eventually, one of the first competitive things I learned, which I learned from some of those World Champion decks, particularly the Merfolk one, actually, which is maybe one reason I have soft spot for Merfolk, the Alex Borda World Champion deck. It just really blew my mind that somebody would play 4 of everything, but you know, when I tried it myself, I couldn't deny that I was just doing better, at least when I was selecting the good cards as a 4 of to play. So yeah, anyway, I don't know if you all can relate to that, but for what it's worth, it does help. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that there are some exceptions. And I think, you know, staring us right in the face, Shinka, the Bloodsoaked Keep, is a pretty good example of an exception. The reality is, Shinka just does not make sense as anything but a 1-of, mostly because it's basically just strictly superior to Mountain as a 1-of, because it can help randomly give Ragavan or Obosh first strike. But as anything above a 1-of, like, it goes from being strictly better to a Mountain to basically being almost strictly worse if you have to sacrifice the second one, even if you only have 2. So I mean, if the ability was more useful, then playing more than 1 could still be worth it, like Pendelhaven sometimes in Infect or Yavimaya. But anyway, I think I think Shinka explains that very well. But as you can see, I'm still trying out Fiery Islet as a 1-of. You know, there are just some cards. It's not exactly like Shinka, but again, at least in this deck where we are very mana hungry, seeing exactly 1 Fiery Islet can be a great way to cash in for just 1 extra card. But I think in this deck, more than one Horizon Land just gives quite diminishing returns, because when you start taking like 4 or 5 or so more damage, sometimes you're giving your opponent multiple free cards worth of like lightning bolts to the face. So yeah, playing a card like this as a 1-of is a great way to allow you to randomly get the benefit, but like it's most of the time essentially going to serve the exact same purpose as the 10 other mountains in the deck. And you know, you'll probably see if I play something as a 1-of, the most common thing it'll be replacing is a basic land. And the fundamental reason for that is basically just that lands, for the most part, are the only cards that are somewhat interchangeable, in that they can mostly do the same thing as, for example, a mountain, or close to the same thing. But they can also have a special effect that may be somewhat negligible in multiples, or they may have a downside like losing life that becomes crippling in multiples. But the fact that they just mostly, for the most part, can do mostly the same thing as a basic is a quality that basically the non-land cards for the most part don't have. I mean, yeah, sure, there's like Rift Bolt or something, but like it's just not the same as Lightning Bolt, so there just really isn't much reason to be experimenting with anything else. And also, by the way, if we played a 1-of non-land card, we'd have to take out either a land, or we'd have to take out another creature. So we'd have to make something go from a 4-of to a 3-of, or we'd have to take out a basic land, which we may not always want to do. So that's another reason. But you know, there could be some circumstance where like a 1-of legendary creature, like for example, I'll give you an example. When I played a burn deck in the past, sometimes I tried to squeeze in a 1-of Zurgo Bellstriker, because I felt as a 1-of Zurgo was actually pretty good, which it kind of was. Needless to say, Ragavan is almost just strictly better. Let me show you all Zurgo. I wonder if I still got these. Yeah, I still do. Zurgo Bellstriker. See, look at how this compares to Ragavan. 1 mana for a 2/2, can't block creatures power 2 or greater, -2. Ragavan, Zurgo. Ragavan, Zurgo. But anyway, yeah, so this is one reason why I also instantly knew, everybody knew Ragavan was going to be nuts, but especially I'm like, oh man, the dash is also going to be nuts, because I remember dashing Zurgo, and that was surprisingly good. But in any case, yeah. Zurgo was an example. There was a time when I played like a 1-of Zurgo, because again, just multiples just are quite diminishing, but as a 1-of exactly, it can just be quite good in a lot of circumstances. So anyway, so those are the exceptions. So I guess to recap, I think 4-ofs make the deck more consistent. 4-ofs help us execute our strategies. They help us focus our strategies more and execute them more consistently. playing 4-ofs helps force us to play generally higher quality cards, and playing 4-ofs can help us avoid stressing or obsessing over feeling like we don't have the correct configuration and the perfectly correct tune number of all the different cards, which can hopefully free us up to focus more on the game at hand, or anything else for that matter. So I hope that you all found this useful in some way. Playing this approach is by no means going to either work for everybody, or is it maybe necessarily the best in the abstract. The thing is, Magic's just such an insanely complicated game that nobody really knows what 100% sure the best way to approach it is. I mean, maybe if there was like a ton of money in the game, like this game would like, there would be like more of like a true kind of a Doyle Brunson type figure, so that would write some kind of, I don't, correct me if I'm mistaken, I don't know if there is a book in Magic kind of like there is in poker. Like in poker, there's a book called Super System by Doyle Brunson that really kind of lays out the essentials of poker that basically everybody knows. Maybe it's like Next Level by Patrick Chaplin or something, which unfortunately I haven't read. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a book really comparable in Magic. Maybe there should be. I don't know that I'm going to write it, but I'm pretty sure it's already been written. And I'm guessing Patrick Chapman wrote it, but please excuse me if I'm missing an obvious one that that's from another offer. I know Mike Flores wrote a ton of seminal articles, so it wouldn't be surprised me if he had some book that kind of puts it all together. But anyway, maybe that's enough for now. But but yeah, while the strategy may not necessarily work for everybody to play all 4-ofs, it's been working for me. And if you can relate to the benefits and the mitigation of downsides, like especially the obsessing over whether you got the right tuning of card numbers, I don't know. I don't know what to say other than that. It might be worth a shot, particularly if you're resonating with the explanations that I'm giving. I'm just hoping you all. I'm just hoping to maybe put it out there more. Why exactly I'm doing what I'm doing, and that's going to be kind of the focus going forward. Is I've got these these shout-out segments that I do because now I'm doing complete leagues, so I'm not having like shout-outs attached to every single video, but I do want to get my shout-outs to my patrons, who I'm very thankful to. Thanks once again. If any of you all have ideas of what to discuss next week, I'm all ears. We could turn this into almost kind of like a Q&A type thing. I may prefer to kind of tackle big questions, like I'd imagine some of the biggest questions that people have are like, why do I play Hammer of Garden? Why do I play mostly 4-ofs? Yeah, if I don't really get much feedback for what anybody wants to discuss, I may end up discussing like why certain cards see play constantly. I might just also go card by card. Like for example, I might focus on like why Relic of Progenitus is my go-to graveyard hate for almost every single archetype. I could also just discuss like why do certain cards like Relic, Ratchet Bomb, the D&D type lands, why do certain cards why are they a common feature that shows up in almost every single deck or sideboard? But anyway, yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to doing this, and if anybody has more ideas, I am definitely open to suggestions, and I hope you all like this. And yeah, I mean, and hopefully this was more focused too. Hopefully I got my points out a little more clearly, at least more succinctly. Maybe not as succinctly as I could have, but at least I hope that this was a little bit easier to listen to. In any case, thank you all, everybody, again. I think I'm losing my voice because, man, doing this twice is like over an hour of talking like this. Yeah. Anyway, take care, everybody. Have a great week. Looking forward to continue. And by the way, this like one completed league every single day, it's not going to continue forever. I've just got a ton of backlogged like Merfolk content more than anything that I'm just paranoid that it's going to become completely irrelevant because the meta is going to completely shift at some point. I want to get these all out before that. So yeah, I'm gonna probably continue to upload 5 or 6 videos this week, but that's not gonna be the norm. And if you just want me to cut it out already because it's like too much, just let me know. Yeah, if you're enjoying it, let me know too. I definitely appreciate it. Thank you, everybody. We're about 35 minutes in. I think it was a little better than last time, but in any case, take care, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Take care. Bye.